The shadows stretched longer, slower, and the air held that unmistakable scent of freshwater, wet earth, and fading sunlight. It was in this delicate hour, just before dusk, that Senjoyo revealed its truest self, not bustling, not silent, but suspended somewhere in between, like a deep breath before nightfall. Senjoyo, a sacred spring located in Tegalwadan village near Salatiga, Central Java, is not a place of grandeur. It does not tower. It does not shout. Yet, it holds something ancient, something quietly powerful, a presence built over generations by the meeting of nature and human reverence. Water trickles endlessly from the earth, pooled into a clear basin where fish swim unhurriedly. Trees, tall and rooted, guard the edges. Small shrines, aged and moss-covered, whisper stories to those who care to listen. I arrived just as the afternoon prayers faded into the distance, their echoes drifting on the wind from a mosque far below the hill. My sandals crunched softly over gravel as I made my way past the stalls that lined the path toward the spring. Some were still open, selling boiled corn, coconut water, and packets of krupik, while others were already beginning to close, their owners chatting idly, unbothered by the slow retreat of customers. Children were still playing by the water. They jumped from the stone ledges with carefree laughter, splashing, shrieking, their joy rising like incense into the golden sky. Some held each other's hands and leapt together, their silhouettes frozen for a second against the descending sun. A few local teenagers sat near the edge, their feet dangling above the surface, whispering gossip, their phones forgotten in the moment. The water glistened with ripples of movement and fading light. I sat on a flat stone near the mainspring and watched as time seemed to dissolve around me. The water was unbelievably clear. I could see every pebble at the bottom, every darting fish, every leaf that floated down from above. It was easy to believe that this water was sacred, that it had flowed from the earth for centuries, perhaps even longer. Locals believed Senjoyo's spring held spiritual power, and I felt, in that quiet moment, that the belief wasn't just tradition, it was intuition. A young woman walked past carrying an offering, banana leaves folded neatly into a small square, topped with rice, flowers, and incense. She stopped by the small shrine under the banyan tree, placed it down gently, and lit a stick of incense. The fragrant smoke spiraled upward into the air. She bowed her head and closed her eyes. No words, no chanting. Just silence. Deep, respectful silence. The late afternoon breeze arrived like a soft whisper. It stirred the tall grass behind me and rustled the leaves overhead. Even the water responded, shimmering briefly before returning to stillness. Insects began to emerge, buzzing lazily. A few dragonflies danced above the spring, their wings catching the light like fragments of stained glass. I closed my eyes for a moment and listened. I heard the distant call of a bird, the soft splash of feet entering water, the murmur of conversation in Javanese from the vendors. I heard the water, endlessly flowing, bubbling up from unseen depths. It was not loud, it did not demand attention. But it was constant, reassuring, timeless. Senjoyo, in the late afternoon, becomes less a destination and more a state of mind. People come not only to bathe or picnic but to pause, to breathe, to forget, even briefly, the noise of the world outside. Here, time does not race. It drips gently like spring water over stone, patient, unhurried, present. An old man approached and sat a few feet beside me. He wore a sarong, a light shirt, and a face marked by decades of sun and stories. He greeted me with a nod. We didn't speak much, just a few polite words. But in that moment, we shared something quieter than conversation, stillness. Both of us looked out over the water, watched the children laugh, listened to the wind. It felt sacred in its simplicity. Eventually, he stood and made his way down to the water. With practiced steps, he waded in, cupping his hands and splashing water over his face, his shoulders, his chest. Then, he simply stood there, as if the spring itself was cleansing more than his body, perhaps his memories, his sorrows, or simply the dust of another long day. By now, the sun was touching the horizon, painting the sky in soft pastels, lavender, peach, and pale blue. The silhouettes of the surrounding trees grew darker. Lanterns began to flicker on at the edge of the warungs, their warm orange glow signaling the shift from day to night. I took one last walk around the spring before heading back. The paths were quieter now. Most visitors had gone. A young couple sat beneath a tree, speaking in hushed tones. A boy fed fish with crumbs of bread, giggling each time they surfaced. One final dive echoed across the basin, followed by laughter and a splash. As I passed the shrine again, I noticed the incense had burned almost to the end. Its smoke now rose in thin lines, barely visible in the fading light. I paused, not to pray, not to offer, but simply to acknowledge, to nod to the place itself, as if to say, I see you. I feel you. Thank you. The walk back to the parking area felt dreamlike. The gravel crunched beneath my feet once again, and the air smelled now of night, cooler, deeper, laced with damp leaves and the distant promise of rain. Before I got into my car, I turned around for one last look. Senjoyo glowed softly in the distance, its spring hidden but alive. Its trees stood tall, its people departed, its water still flowing. And I felt, truly, that I had touched something timeless. Not because of what I had done, but because I had simply been.